Hi there everyone, and welcome to this 5-part series which is all about celebrating our differences as women and very much focused on our hormones and the gifts and advantages that these actually can bring us in life. So as I say, it's a 5-part series. So each day this week, I'm going to release a little video and a post to cover a slightly different angle on this. So today I'm going to introduce the menstrual cycle and the phases that we go through in a menstrual cycle and the gifts that can bring us. Tomorrow I'm going to map onto the menstrual cycle the psychological skills that research has shown us that we need to live a meaningful, rich, joyful life. So I'm going to map those onto the menstrual cycle and show how they go so beautifully together, and how the menstrual cycle is there for us to show us how to use these psychological skills. And then so it'll be on Wednesday, on day 3, I'm going to talk about the perimenopause, so the phase before the menopause, and how that's a really rich time for us and can present lots of wonderful gifts. It's a tricky time, but actually the fact that it is also means that there are little nuggets of gold for us to pick up along the way. And then on day 4, which will be Thursday, I'll talk about postmenopause and how that is a time of potentially bringing our best into the world. And then on Friday, on the 5th day, I will then bring it together and talk about how do we embrace the gifts that I've been talking about through the previous days. So let me get on to today's topic, which is the menstrual cycle and the different phases that we have in the cycle, and how that and the gifts that can bring us. I have only discovered the incredible wisdom that I have held in my body for so many years, but not embraced and not used. I've only discovered that in the past couple of years. And you too, if you're a woman listening to this, and you are pre-menopause, you also hold this wisdom in your body. And actually, post-menopause, reflecting on this can actually be a really helpful process, but that's a whole other discussion, really. So previously, I lived my life very much kind of going, and then boom, and then I would flake out, and I would just drop, and my energies would just kind of crash away. So almost like I was a wave of activity, and then I'd crash, and then a wave of activity and out there doing stuff, and then crash. And that was leading me towards burnout. And I know a lot of women also are living that kind of quite linear life, really, just going, and then we crash, our energy crashes. Whereas, so the past couple of years, I have been introduced to the menstrual cycle. Obviously, I've been having this menstrual cycle for a very long time now. I'm in my early 40s. And the menstrual cycle is, as it says, it's a cycle, and it's about cyclical living, and it helps us to sustain our energy and actually start to really tap into a deeper wisdom that can help us in our lives. So I'm going to go through the actual phases of the cycle and what they mean to us. So today's a bit like an information kind of video, and then tomorrow, like I said, I'm going to map on the psychological processes that naturally connect with our menstrual cycle. So I'm going to start with menstruation, because the day 1 of our periods is considered as day 1 of the cycle. So menstruation is considered to be our winter phase. So there are 4 phases in the menstrual cycle, and they are all beautifully linked to the seasons. Now, this approach has been delivered to the world by the ladies at the Red School. So this is where I've got all this information from, and I'm so grateful to them for writing the book Wild Power. And I highly recommend, if you haven't read it, that you immerse yourself in Wild Power. So thank you to them for this information that I'm sharing with you today. So yeah, menstruation is our inner winter. So that is the time for rest. And I previously had not honoured that, and I think we're given lots of messages that actually you can still do what you want to do. You can do the sports, you can do the, as younger as I remember as a teenager, nothing will stop you. Use a tampon, you can get out there, you still do your sports, blah 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 blah. But actually, this is a phase where we are primed. We are meant to be resting as much as we can and really, really looking after ourselves. And if we do that, then we are much more productive, much more able to do the things that we're meant to be doing in the other phases of the season. So menstruation is the winter, and it's all about rest. Then we move into spring. And this is a transitional phase. So the menstrual cycle's got kind of two strong kind of poles, really, and that's the menstruation and then the ovulation, which is when we release an egg, which is kind of the other end. So it's normally about, if we say that a cycle is 28 days, then menstruation is that first, like say day 1 to maybe day 4 roughly, and then ovulation is kind of halfway through your cycle around day 14. Very variable, obviously, but roughly it's like those two poles are clear and are there. And then out of menstruation we come into spring, and so this is the transition from menstruation to ovulation. And yes, so as I say, this is called the spring phase. And this is, it's the follicular, in terms of medical terms, it's the follicular phase. But it's lovely to think about this as our inner spring, because I have been very guilty. In fact, I'm always have to be aware of the fact that once I've finished menstruation, I do get a bit of a boost of energy, and I get very excited about that, and I want to then just plough into stuff that I want to be getting on to doing. But what I've realised, and I think that has been part of my boom and bust cycle in the past, but what I realise now is this is a spring phase. So it's about pacing our energy, and it's about allowing those little buds of growth to peep up. It's a very creative phase, and a phase where fresh ideas come into our minds, but not about just getting on with them. But it's about reining ourselves in, being really aware of those ideas, but nurturing them. So it's about just taking it easy as we transition out of winter through spring, and then when we get into summer, that is the action phase. So that's very much where the outer lights are on, and our inner lights. So at menstruation, it's very much about the inner, what's going on inside us. And we get to ovulation, it's what's going on outside us. So that's the time where we're much more sociable. Our communication is much clearer. We're very much primed for relationships and going out there and doing the things that we want to do, and putting into place some of the ideas, but not all of them. The ideas that come through spring, it's about choosing, okay, that's something I want to focus on this month. And going with that, and putting that out into the world, whatever that might be and however that might be. So it is a phase of more energy, absolutely. So it's go, do. It's the time where we feel like we can spin all those plates, and do it. Absolutely do it. Then when we pass through ovulation, we then go into the next the other transitional phase, which is the luteal phase in terms of medical terms, and this is the autumn phase of our cycle. So we're transitioning from that sort of activity round back to menstruation, which is the rest phase. And so this is a time to reflect, to start reflecting and almost analysing that summer phase. How did it go? What went well? And it's a time where the hormones are obviously changing all the way through the cycle. This is all linked to our changing hormones. And the hormone changes throughout autumn mean that we don't have the hormones that just kind of smooth over those things that are really frustrating us or annoying us or worrying us or making us feel anxious. They're reducing, and so all those things that we are not happy with in our lives and things that we are struggling with, they become clearer, really. Our inner critic is exposed, but that's okay. I think lots of us worry about that, but actually it's really important that we become aware of what is not serving us, what didn't go well, reflecting back on the cycle that's gone before. Actually, did I rush out at spring too quickly, and actually did I then have a massive energy flop, or actually when I did that, a few days ago, that didn't go so well, and what's that about? So it's about listening to the inner critic, letting it have its voice. It's got its place, and I guess it's about knowing the inner critic has its place in the autumn phase, and so letting it, if the inner critic decides to kind of peep up at other parts of the phase, maybe just saying to it, you have your place, your time will come, and using it in the autumn phase rather than it feeling like it overwhelms throughout the whole cycle. So yes, it's very much a kind of the inner lights are starting to light up and the outer lights are starting to dim down. So we're moving from being out there doing all the things to actually start to be more self-reflective and self-aware as we move round to menstruation. So that's a really brief summary of the menstrual cycles and the seasons that can be mapped onto the menstrual cycle, and understanding those seasons and trying as much as possible, sometimes even just tiny little things, sort of incorporating that in tiny little ways can actually have a massive impact. That's what I've experienced, absolutely. And just having that awareness, if you're feeling kind of full of energy and really excitable and can't sleep, and you're thinking, what's this all about? And then going, oh, of course, actually, I'm on like day 11, I'm starting to be really getting towards ovulation here, and it makes sense. It's just really a really nice framework that is within us all. It's this deep wisdom that's been there the whole time, and if we can start to embrace it and honour it, it really gives us a massive advantage to lead more sustainable, meaningful, purposeful lives. So tomorrow I'm going to go through the psychological processes that science has showed us, all the research has showed us, that help us to let go of anxieties and to function better in all areas of our lives. Because as a clinical psychologist, I've realised that the psychological processes map directly onto the menstrual cycle. It's incredible. So I really look forward to sharing that with you tomorrow. It'll be a slightly shorter video tomorrow, but I will really look forward to sharing that information with you. So until tomorrow, I'll see you.